small business owner. They're not practicing going after cartels.
But Tim, they've also learned that it's easier to force you to comply at the end of a barrel than it is from the end of an ink pen. And that's what we all need to be concerned here. And I'll tell you something. I mean, going back, I think in 1913 it was probably one of the worst years for our Constitution because one, we had the 16th Amendment, which was federal income taxes, and the 17th Amendment, which actually, stopped our U.S. senators from actually being elected by our state legislators, which actually controlled federal overgrowth in violation of the 10th Amendment. But I'm one of those guys that why should I be taxed on the hard work that I've earned or the investments? Why couldn't it be on consumer or fair tax? Why can't we go to something like this, which actually makes sense for every individual? But not only this, why can't we reduce federal government? When it comes to the IRS or the ATF or the DOE or any of these, and that's Department of Education, by the way, not energy. But my whole point is
you can
that
reduce energy
federal, but my whole point is that federal overgrowth and the weaponization of these departments and agencies will be the death of America.
The 87,000 agents are going to do so much damage to the daily commerce that we do as a country. It is not strange, and Venmo was very convenient for just getting rid of checks and paper and cash. But it was not hard to bring X number head of cattle and swap $40,000, and I'll keep that 40 grand in my Venmo because I know tomorrow I'm gonna do it on something. And I don't really have the 40,000. I'm holding it for a little while until I get the cows back from auction, and then the Venmo. But if I have IRS agents, they're gonna be like, "What was this $40,000?" And that's exactly what.
But now it's down to $600.
What's this $4,000 you have on Venmo? Well, it wasn't really a profit. It was a transaction that was taking 2 weeks, and it's gonna disappear. Doesn't matter where your taxes.
They tried implementing that policy or that law about tracking $600 transactions or more.
That's what I'm referring to.
They're not going after billionaires, dude.
Correct. Well, we already know that 75% of last year's audits were people that was making less than 100 grand a year. So the idea that they're getting these 87,000, IRS agents, it baffles my mind when I think about the fact of what that costs and why we're not allocating that money to things like securing our borders or increasing our law enforcement so we can get increased criminality. The fact that we're 12 to 15,000 recruitment short for our armed services. Why aren't we looking at things that actually matter to the everyday American? And the reason why? Because the government wants to steal every penny they have out of your pocket.
I think it's a slow motion demolition. The military, for instance, the recruitment. Who wants to join a woke military?
No one does. They're worried about pronouns, CRT, inclusiveness, diversity, instead of the things they need to be worried about, which is increased lethality, readiness, and preparedness. That's the things that I focused on when I was in the military.
Yeah, but if you're one of these people who like that the Guardian article who's like, I will never survive, she's the kind of person running the military these days. Yeah. And so
that's exactly right. I mean, look who's running the nuclear sector right now. I mean, I don't even know what its name is.
No, is anyone running it?
Oh, well.
Probably not.
I want to jump to the story from the Post-Millennial.
Wait, we can't finish with Jennifer Lawrence, the poor girl. She never gets any time, Tim.
We got the story from the Post-Millennial. Majority of Americans say Biden's anti-MAGA speech was designed to incite conflict. The poll found that 56.8% of likely general election voters said that Biden's speech represents a dangerous escalation in rhetoric and is designed to incite conflict amongst Americans.
The Babylon Bees had their best night ever. They're like 30. Biden kicked out of Austrian art school.
Yeah.
Biden issues non-aggression pact with Poland. I genuinely spit out laughing when I saw that headline pop up. It was. I had to watch that speech because I did a bunch of radio and TV on it later on that night, and that was just some crazy.
Biden comes out and he's like, "I'm the president, and I hate half this country." And then the next day they're like, "Why are you talking about Trump supporters?" And was like, I was not talking about Trump supporters. Then he comes out like the policies proposed by these people are a threat. Dude, it is that people fall for this when they lie. It is insane. Pandering to the base is gutting the Democrats, and it's backfiring already. 56.8%, they don't like it. Independent voters, they don't like it. You're not going to win with just getting Democrats. You got to.
Well, and especially when you ran as being the unifier and you became the divider in chief. I mean, that's really what's taking place here. And so we have to understand the fact that what they're looking at, and when you're seeing headlines like this where they're thinking, oh, this is to incite conflict, well, that's because they thought that the whole January 6th incident was actually good for them politically. And they're trying to, basically utilize that to try and advance them and stop the red wave from coming in. But, look, we have to identify for what it is. I mean, this is literally him calling half of the nation extremists.
You know what that speech reminded me of? You know, like, and especially an 80s or early 90s movie where there's some bad thing happening and finally someone stands up in the high school gym and they give this speech and all the bad guys put their head down and realize they're wrong, and then finally someone courageously starts the slow clap and everyone's like, yes, and justice is served. That speech to me sounds like it was written by a 26-year-old kid who was a poli-sci major who really thinks that if I just lay it out like this, all those Trump supporters are going to sit there at home and say, you know what, guys, like, it was written by a child.
But they didn't identify, but they never did actually say what it was that we as America First candidates actually, Americans, are actually about. They didn't identify. I mean, the people they described was their own followers.
Well, and the thing that cracked me up is that after the speech of calling us all these names, was one of his last lines was how we have to start seeing each other as fellow Americans. And I thought, did you just not listen to the things you read off the teleprompter for the last 20 minutes? Like, it really was, whoever his speechwriters are, and boy, this White House has struggled with speechwriters, none more than columnists, of course. But it really was it was a very immature speech. It sounded like that speech that a kid wants to give to their mom because mom didn't let me. It was just a childish, immature, petty, petulant speech. It was embarrassing.
Was it written? I didn't see him reading off a prompter or any notes.
Oh, there's no way that he rambled on that long without. No, absolutely
Did he have
not.
like multiple monitors around the room?
A lot of times they have these see-through monitors that are at a distance that you can't see because of the camera angles, and they're looking at the back shots. But he's sitting here, when he's going left to right, it's because there's usually two prompters that are up there that are clear that actually have everything on there. Do you really think Joe Biden can keep a continuous thought for more than 30 seconds where he says vanilla or chocolate ice cream?
Remember the Simpsons episode?
Shaking hands.
Remember the Simpsons episode where Homer's like, "You have my undivided attention," and then it zooms into his brain, and it's like a turtle playing like Old McDonald or whatever, like banging on his chest. That's what I meant with Biden.
If I'd taken this poll here, I would have said that it seemed like the speech was intended to divide and incite. Maybe, I don't know if incite conflict, divide, because of the red background.
Correct.
Blood red background. You see the wide shot, there's also all this blue, and there's just this little segment, but all the media apparatus that wanted to record it had just pure red.
Can I just say
Blood
one
red,
No
red
one's
is the
going to
agitation.
do a big
But
wide
can I
shot.
just say one thing, though, whether it's Republican or Democrat? One of the things that disgusts me as, prior military and combat veteran, we have to stop utilizing our military for backdrop props. This is something that just shows absolute disrespect, because the thing that you have to understand is that when you serve in the military, you serve a commander-in-chief, and we don't think of this as it is an apolitical thing for us. And the fact that the left and the right try and utilize the military as a political backdrop really needs to stop.
I think it's illegal to campaign with military present. Is that someone was
It's a
telling me?
violation of campaign rules that military and also like even police and fire in their uniform. They're not
But
allowed
not
to.
the
In their
president.
personal capacity.
The president is allowed to. The president and vice president are allowed to campaign.
If
The military can't do politics.
Yes, but that's why they said this was not a campaign speech. This is a presidential speech. Again, deep concern for fossil fuel use. We had a fly to Philadelphia, and no fossil fuels to light up Independence Hall. Right? Why couldn't he be given the speech from the Oval? Right? I don't know why, and this is something I've asked before in other shows. Ever since Reagan, really, and maybe a little bit Clinton, presidents don't use the Oval anymore. Right? Ronald Reagan addressed everyone from the Oval on the regular when he gave a speech. And I don't know why, what's changed, but presidents don't speak